Bitcoin bouncing back following a pretty steep drop last week of more than 40% from record highs the week before that. Maria Bartiromo spoke with the Winklevoss twins, who founded an exchange for the virtual currency, and they had some words for those who may fear a Bitcoin bubble. Watch.
Because to this point, it's basically been a spot market. And so this is the first time that people can actually express easily a short position on Bitcoin. So what that's going to do is create a truly two-sided market, which should reduce volatility in the long term and also increase price discovery and just make it easier for institutions and individuals to gain access and exposure to Bitcoin. With this contract, because it's cash settled, you can buy it with cash and you settle out in cash. So you don't have to actually touch the underlying or deal with Bitcoin, but you can get the investment exposure to it. So it's just another financial product, an easier way to get access.
It certainly gives you more liquidity, that's for sure. And Tyler, you both made the point when you were on the morning show. Now people could put their money where their mouths are, right? Because you've got people like Jamie Dimon calling Bitcoin a fraud. So if you think it's a fraud, go short it.
Absolutely, yeah. We've been working really hard to give Jamie Dimon an opportunity to short Bitcoin. And anybody who says that, you know, it's a fraud or a bubble, you can go now, put your money where your mouth is and bet against it. Yeah, I mean, talk is cheap, and that's right. Now you can actually, like Cameron said, you can bet against this. So we encourage Jamie Dimon, we encourage him to personally bet against this Bitcoin, take JP Morgan's balance sheet, bet against Bitcoin. We'll see what happens, but now they can do it instead of just sort of throwing stones.
Yeah, but Tyler, you got to explain this because people are wondering what Bitcoin is backed by. When I look at the dollar is backed by the full faith of the Treasury, the full faith of the U.S. government. What, Cameron, is Bitcoin backed by?
So it's a great question. So Bitcoin, we think of Bitcoin as gold. And I think if you look at gold, some people point to an intrinsic value of gold, but that really doesn't explain the value of gold. It might explain 10, 15% of the actual value of gold. Gold has value because we all agree that it has value, and we'll all accept gold. And it has a collective acceptance and value that way. Bitcoin, in addition to being increasingly accepted around the world and more people coming into the system by the day, has the mining network, which is one of the largest computer networks in the world, and it's backed by cryptography. A lot of people would look at the US dollar or government-backed currencies and say a government has counterparty risk. The average lifespan of a currency is roughly 27 years. Look no further than the Zimbabwe dollar. They have, I think, $1 trillion bill, or Venezuela. The history of most currencies is really terrible. And so, yes, living in the U.S., we look at the U.S. dollar and we say, well, what's wrong with that? And it's a pretty decent store of value. But in reality, most fiat currencies out there fail.
So how many Bitcoins do you both own?
We're not commenting on that right now.
Why not?
Because we're here to talk about the Bitcoin futures contract. We may discuss that later at some point.
Look, Bitcoin this past weekend opens with a $1,000 spike, 1,000 contracts trading hands in the first hour. An exchange halt happened because of the volatility and the website crashed, all in less than 24 hours. We know that the currency has risen more than 1,500% this year, actually 2,000% this year. So let me ask you, maybe Bitcoin is real, but is it a bubble?
Yeah, it's a great question. People use the word bubble, and this is basically Bitcoin's 20th bubble. That, you know, we came in five years ago. Remember when Bitcoin was a bubble at $30? Bitcoin was a bubble at $100, at $500, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. Now we're at a bubble at $17,000. You know, gold's been a bubble for thousands of years. But the bubble framework is really not correct to put against Bitcoin. When you think of a company, right, and their stock price, if they produce X amount of units one year and the same amount of units the next year, and the stock price goes up, and the economic doubles, and the economic productivity hasn't changed, the cash flows haven't changed with the company, we say that company is overvalued. But Bitcoin is not a company. It is a network. And the value of networks is Metcalfe's law. It's n squared. So the amount of users on a network is n. And so if I'm the only person in the world who has a phone, then it's not very valuable. I can't call you. But if you buy a phone, you've actually increased the value of my phone inadvertently or not even knowing, because now all of a sudden my phone's useful. Same thing with the social network. If you look at Facebook, the first person on Facebook, lonely place, not much to do. All of a sudden, 100 people, you can connect with people, you can share stories, share pictures.
That's a good analogy.
So it's classic network effects. 1 billion people on Facebook, that's 1 billion squared, right? So that's all of a sudden the value gets exponentially greater. And that's how we value Bitcoin. Money is a network. People believe in the US dollar, it has more value. People believe in Bitcoin, it has value. People believe in gold, it has value. And that's not a linear increase. By definition, the more people that get into Bitcoin, it makes it more valuable. And when we try and take like equities or stock bubble type frameworks to Bitcoin, it's really, it's misguided because it's a network.
Have you sold any Bitcoin so far?
Well, we purchased tickets to space with Bitcoin a couple years ago on Virgin Galactic, and we clearly overpaid for that. But look, we believe long term that there's still a long way for Bitcoin's value to go from here. We think that it is gold 2.0, and it's disrupting potentially gold, which is a $6 trillion market cap. So if you look at Bitcoin today at 300 billion, it looks like, and it's certainly appreciated quite a bit in the past year. But look, we've been saying this for the past 5 years when Bitcoin was $1 billion market cap, that Bitcoin is a better gold. If you look at the properties of gold that make gold gold, like scarcity, fungibility, divisibility, portability, Bitcoin equals or surpasses gold across each category. So for example, gold is scarce, Bitcoin is actually fixed at 21 million. It's divisible into 100 million pieces. It's actually kind of hard to cut up bars of gold, and they're hard to move.
That's
they're
true.
not nearly as portable. And part of this, I think, is a little bit of a generational thing. I hate to say that, but if you talk to millennials or kids on the street,
right,
they don't want hardware. They want software. They get Bitcoin. There's no explanation necessary. They don't talk about wanting to wear Bitcoin or, why isn't Bitcoin shinier? They want a digital. They live in a digital world. They live in a 24/7 world. They're connected all the time. And Bitcoin is money built for the internet that moves like information and email and everything else. Gold is just the old world.
Yeah.
It had its place. It's had a great 3,000-year run, and Bitcoin, has only been here for 10 years, but it's really, cutting in quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's absolutely right. I mean, taking a break from the real world and going to the online world used to be how things were. Now people take a break from the online world and step into the real world for be right back for 10 minutes. But they're really living most of their lives in a digital world.
Are you surprised at this incredible success? I mean, I know that you were early believers, but wow, you were right.
Yeah, I mean, so when we first found Bitcoin or first came across it, it sounds like a huge idea. It's kind of crazy, and it's not crazy to be very skeptical and say I think Cameron Burst said, this is either huge or total bull. We know this was back in 2012, but kept learning, kept talking to people about it, kept asking questions, kept getting incredible answers back. And I just couldn't see how this couldn't work or wouldn't work. Maybe that's what makes us a little bit different. The way we think about things, we're sort of optimists and we want to dig deeper and we want to believe and look for that thing. We obviously get really passionate about it, but again, we really couldn't see how, why we wouldn't be sitting here today, 5 years ago, why we wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you, having this conversation. So, that was sort of our thinking the whole time.
I think we always thought it was a binary outcome. It was either 0 or potentially, as large as gold or even bigger. Maybe we just see the world differently, and we're, one of the few that saw it that way. But that's kind of the outcome that we envisioned, and I think, it's not really a surprise that we're here.
So maybe Bitcoin is the new gold, at least according to the Winklevoss twins.